Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. I'm not entirely sure what's going on with the audio in this one. It sounds like a little thin, like not very bass. That could just be because I've still got a cold. But what I thought we'd do today is we would look at the Napoleon trailer, the second one that's been released, have a quick look at it, and then more importantly I think we'll have a look at what this means going forward. Now, if you've not seen the trailer, I would recommend pausing the video here because I might be able to show it, I might not, I'm not sure when recording this part, and we'll see how that goes. But if you've not seen it, then pause the video here, open up a new tab, and go and check out Napoleon Trailer 2, and then pop back here afterwards. So, we're all caught up now, we've all seen the second trailer, and it starts off with a quick montage of shots, and it says, "Long live the warrior, emperor, general, genius, and tyrant." Bit of a weird order to have them in there, because, okay, he was a warrior first, but then he was a general before he was an emperor. A little bit weird. And also, long live the emperor is the saying. So, I don't know, a little bit weird, but, yeah, whatever. I don't cut trailers, so what do I know? Now, I should say that when it says genius, there's a short shot of a very sweet cavalry charge that he's participating in there. We'll talk more about that later, I think. So the trailer proper starts off with an ADC saying, "General, we are discovered." And Napoleon sat there in his chasseur à cheval colonel's uniform, which was a common uniform that he liked to wear in the field. Now, the first thing that strikes me is Joaquin Phoenix. Of course, he is ridiculously too old to play Napoleon. I think, someone said to me, he's 2 or 3 years younger than Napoleon was when he died. So there's, yeah, he's far, far too old. But you know what? I'm going to try and look beyond that. And, yeah, I mean, yeah. Now, it's interesting that he refers to him as general. I'm assuming that this is before the Battle of Austerlitz. Now, you'll see in the next couple of scenes why I think it's before the Battle of Austerlitz. By this time, he was emperor. In fact, he was an emperor to the year that he crowned himself at Notre Dame. Again, we'll talk more about that later, I'm sure. And so you could have suggested that he would be referred to as sire or emperor, something like that. Now, I'm going to give a little bit of leeway here. If he is Napoleon's aide-de-camp, he could have been with him when he was a general. He might have even been with him when he was a captain or a lieutenant. So, I think we can allow a little bit of leeway here. I think veteran soldiers in particular, of whom there were quite a number in 1805, would get away with calling Napoleon general. His response to being discovered? Good. Love it. Really like. And then it cuts to a wide shot of a massive cavalry. It's an absolutely gorgeous looking shot. It reminds me a lot of a French film. I can't remember the name of it now. It's Captain something or other. It's the name of the main character, where they have the Battle of Eylau. It reminds me of that. But it's a wide shot. I suspect it's Austerlitz. It's clearly a winter scene. And we'll see in a bit that they are Austrians that he's fighting. Now, it must be said that being a trailer, though, just because the scenes are next to each other, they could be from completely different parts of the film. So I am keeping that in the back of my mind as well. So we then cut to the Battle of Austerlitz itself. Napoleon is hiding, his artillery's cammed up, and then as I think he's a Russian actually, discovers that they're on the ice, they sound the retreat, and the artillery opens up, firing cannonballs through the ice and drowning loads of people. Now, this is not actually what happened at the Battle of Austerlitz. The cannons did fire on the frozen fish ponds, as they were called, and certainly a number of men did drown. However, that was at the end of the battle, while the forces were retreating. These days, it would almost certainly be classified as a war crime, but, they did have that kind of thing then. Napoleon's army was absolutely not hidden from the Allies. In fact, he made a great show of pulling his troops off the Pratzen Heights. Austerlitz is still studied, certainly in Sandhurst and West Point today. One can imagine that it'll be studied in the Chinese and Russian equivalents as well, and presumably the French ones. And the reason why it was such a spectacular win for Napoleon is he weakened his centre, he weakened his central position in order to draw the Allies on. Now, there's no point in weakening your central position if the enemy don't know you've done it. That's the whole point of you doing it. So it's a bit weird that he decided to have them undercover, Ridley Scott, the director, has had them undercover and then almost ambushed the enemy army. But, I mean, we'll see how it plays out in the film. It's historically very inaccurate at the moment in this section, but you know what? I'm going to give it a pass for now. The shot of the Austrian cavalrymen galloping away with the flag, absolutely awesome. Love that. Really, really good. And you know what? I'll talk about that at the end. I don't want to get too carried away now. But weird coughing edit there. But no, that's a fantastic shot. I think he's a dragoon. He could be a cuirassier, but I suspect he's a dragoon. Really cool. Really like that. And then the end of that scene is Joaquin Phoenix's voiceover saying, "I'm not built like other men." Now, I don't know if that's a direct quote from Napoleon. However, it definitely sounds like it could be. That is 100% the kind of thing that he would come out with. So, overall accuracy of the Austerlitz battle, as it's looking just purely on the this trailer, 3 out of 10. It scores some points because it's got the correct Russian uniforms. You saw them with their big toilet brush plumes. And it's got the Russians and the Austrians fighting together. It's not just about one side. So, it gets 3 out of 10 for me. It does also have the scene with the lakes. But, as I suspect, they're very much in the wrong part of the battle. Also, I should say, in that final scene where he says, "I'm not built like other men," seeing the old guard in the background at attention, just super cool. Really, really awesome. It then cuts to a scene that's got quite washed out colours. So I assume it's filmed in Mexico. If you've seen Breaking Bad or any other film where they go south of the border, it's always in that sort of washed out sepia tone. But no. In this case, I suspect it is the siege of Toulon. That was, of course, where Napoleon made his name. He says that the Directory, effectively, he doesn't say that, but the Directory just see him as a brute. He is just a tool for them to use. And you know what? I think there's probably some truth in that, historically accurate-wise. I don't think they've fully understood Napoleon's abilities and ambition. I think they understood his ambition, but I don't think they really thought that he had the capability to make it come true. There are a lot of people with a lot of ambition at the time, but Napoleon stands head and shoulders above them. The song that's playing over the scene is War Pigs by Black Sabbath. So it'd be interesting to see if there's any modern music in the film, or if that's just in the trailers. Now, trailers, they often have a lot of modern pop songs, perhaps sometimes re-recorded. This is a legacy of Suicide Squad, in which case the trailer was absolutely super. I mean, the trailer for Suicide Squad is incredible, the original trailer. The film is absolutely terrible, but the trailer's great, and I think tends to be more of a modern thing. I don't suspect that the film will have any modern music in it, but you never know. If it does, in this case, I think it works quite well. Let's see. I would be surprised if it does, though. We see a night attack, which is always very difficult to get on screen. If anyone's seen Game of Thrones, they can attest that. But it looks pretty good. It looks pretty gory. That's what we like to see. Old Napoleon at the end is absolutely covered head to toe in blood. So it seems to be very visceral. You've got a cool shot of the grenadiers running in there. They look like early war grenadiers as well. They're with the bearskins on, so that's pretty cool. It looks like the uniforms are going to be excellent. Now, it cuts from there to the next part of Napoleon's story. Now, one of the things that I'm quite interested in is going to be how they managed to cram all of Napoleon's life into this thing. Because as we've seen, it would have been very easy to cut out Toulon. It would have been very easy to cut out Egypt. It would have been very to cut out loads of stuff, but it's all in there, so let's see how that goes. So the next cut is always reminds me of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, when they're going through the Valley of the Crescent Moon. So yeah, it reminds me of that, but it comes out, and you know what? I don't mind that, because that when it opens out and you see Petra in real life, what it is, it really brings the wonder of it to you. If you've ever actually been to Petra, and I haven't, that's not how you get to Petra. It doesn't look anything like that. But in my head, that's what it is. And it's very similar with this. They come out from between these rocks, and you can see the pyramids there. Now, the pyramids are on the Giza Plateau, so there's no canyons near them. But you know what? Who cares? It looks absolutely awesome. I should warn you in advance of this next section, so you might want to skip ahead, that Napoleon's Egypt campaign is the one that gets me the most excited. I don't know a huge amount about it, but it's got absolutely everything that I love about the Napoleonic period. It's got the romance, the drama, the uniform. Oh, I absolutely love the Egyptian campaign. So this is all me. I'm absolutely loving this. He mentions that he's following in the footsteps of Alexander and Julius Caesar. Certainly, we consider him today to be, one of the successors. You talk about the greatest generals of all time. You talk of Napoleon, Alexander, and Caesar in the same breath. You might put in Temujin, someone like that as well. But those are the great three generals of Western canon. Again, there are obviously others, but those three. If you were to talk to a random person in the street and say, name a famous general, they would probably eventually get to Alexander, Caesar, or Napoleon. It's unlikely that they're going to go, yes, I think Maurice of Saxony would be my top. I mean, people aren't going to say that, are they? So Napoleon is definitely up there in that category. Did he say that at the time? Again, I don't know, but it could have been the kind of thing that he would say privately. The scene we see him in Egypt, he takes his hat off and puts it on top of a mummy's sarcophagus. This is a weird shot, and it's so weird. I suspect it's probably true, something that happened. So, again, though, the symbolism, it's about that. It's about the imagery. Fantastic. Absolutely love it. We then cut to, shall we say, a rather steamy scene in which Josephine is seducing Napoleon. Now, this I really like, because this is... So, I'm going to get on my soapbox a little bit here. There's a lot of complaints recently that there are no strong women characters, so they put in female characters who are usually just rebrandings of male characters. The female James Bond or Captain Marvel would be two really good examples of that. So I say female James Bond, 007 became a woman, you know what I mean. Anyway, so Josephine was a woman who was very powerful. She was very intelligent, and she very much steered Napoleon through the social circles of post-revolutionary France. She is probably the most important person in the rise of Napoleon, in my opinion. And it's great to see her using her sexuality here, because that was, a huge thing for Napoleon. The famous letter of like "don't wash" and stuff like that. Yeah, but it's great to see it. It's great to see a strong, powerful female character on screen in a film that's ostensibly going to be a man's film. Now, it's presumably in the trailer to add a bit of titillation and also something for the women, a bit of a romance subplot. I mean, fair enough. I don't know how much of that the movie is going to take up. I mean, again, they're cramming so much in. I can't imagine it's going to take that much up. If it does, then they're really, really going to have to cram all the war stuff in. Now, interestingly, in another spot, I have heard Ridley Scott refer to it as a war film. It's not a melodrama. It's not a romance. I mean, something like Gone with the Wind, you could say is a war film, but I don't think many people would. I think Gone with the Wind is a melodrama that has a war in it. Another great example is my all-time favourite movie. For me, it's my desert island movie number one, Casablanca. Now, Casablanca is set during the war. You could say, well, Casablanca's a war film. It's got Germans in it. It's got Free French in it. It's got Czech freedom fighters in it. It's a war film, but it's not, is it? It's a melodrama that happens to be set during the war. So the fact that Ridley Scott has referred to it as a war film, well, let's hope that there's lots of war in it. The next shot looks like the main entrance to Versailles. There's two cavalrymen charging through with flags. I'm not really sure what they are. I'm not even sure if they're French, to be honest. They've got almost Russian-looking helmets, but the fact that it's Versailles makes me think they're probably French. Now, we were talking earlier on about how Ridley Scott has been marketing the film, saying it's a war film. And the next thing we have is, before this scene we've had from Ridley Scott, and then we get the director of, and then he gives three examples of the films that he's directed, of Alien, Blade Runner, and then the last one, Gladiator. Now, obviously, that one makes sense. That is a historical epic, and it's got Joaquin Phoenix in. I'm a little surprised that it didn't have Black Hawk Down as one of the films, which is a far more out-and-out war film than any of the other three that I mentioned. It then cuts to him on a ship, again in his chasseur uniform. Now, Napoleon took three famous voyages, I guess. The first one would be to Egypt. The second one would be to Elba, and the third one would be to St. Helena. Well, probably his one back from Elba was more famous. But anyway, so it could be any one of those three. With there being no de-aging or anything like that, it's difficult to tell. It looks to me like it's probably either his final trip to St. Helena. But either way, it's a good scene. It's nice to see some naval action going on. And it cuts to him saying that he will not need a second in command. I assume that's the Directory sending him on his Egyptian expedition, because that's the only time I can well, maybe to Toulon. I don't know. Those are the only two reasons I can really think that someone would be sending him somewhere. I'm not sure how much of the 1896 Italian campaign we're going to go and see, but I would suggest probably not much, to be honest. Again, they are trying to pack a lot into a reasonably short run time. Now, we then cuts to an Austrian, I suspect again he's a cuirassier, as he gallops past the artillery battery, slicing down a artilleryman. It's a pretty cool shot, and you can see that the men are wearing bicorns, so that's quite nice. Again, in 1805, they would have had the bicorns. The Russians would have had the toilet brushes on their heads, so it's all good period detail there. It's not like, say, the BBC War and Peace, where they just had the 1805 Russians in Kiewa, and that was the same as the 1812 one. So really good to see that they've differentiated the uniforms there. The next shot is of him clinking glasses with someone. Now that is Tsar Alexander, so presumably this is going to be the Treaty of Tilsit, the 3-day love-in that the two of them had whilst poor old the King of Prussia, King Frederick Wilhelm of Prussia, had to sit around and watch, basically. So that's certainly Tilsit. Looking at the Imperial Guard, they've got their summer dress uniforms on, which is quite nice. They're on the left. On the right, you've got the Russians, who seem to have they seem to have the normal shakos on as well, so that's good. There's some sort of general behind them in his bicorn and his sash. It's difficult to see. It could be Raevsky, someone like that. But that's cool. I'm glad to see that. Treaty of Tilsit was quite an important thing in the Napoleonic period. You don't often see that much about it, so it'll be quite an interesting scene. Maybe a little bit of a palate cleanser just before we get into the absolute craziness that's to come with 1812. Now, I should say, time-wise, we are absolutely all over the place. The next one is a masquerade ball, so that's pretty cool. It could be in Venice, but I think it's very unlikely. I think it's probably just a ball in Paris. And then we cut to the Revolution, and a woman who I assume is Marie Antoinette being marched to the scaffold. I've just gone back to check to see if the Place de la Concorde, which is where the guillotine was, it's supposed to be, I think, probably the inside of the Louvre here, but it was actually on the Place de la Concorde. I was just looking to see if it is the Royal Naval College at Greenwich, which always stands in for 19th century Paris, or 18th century Paris. And I'm not sure if it is. There's a gate that looks very, very similar to it, so I think it might be just with CGI added on to the rest. Now, I spent quite a lot of time in the Naval College down in Greenwich, so I do know it quite well. I think it might be, but I'm not 100% sure. So then we see a really nice cut. Now, it's a good technique where it's similar-ish to 2001: A Space Odyssey, where it starts off and there's a group of monkeys, or monkeys or apes, I think, and one of them picks up a bone and starts smashing a skull with it. It becomes the first tool. He then throws the bone up in the air, and it cuts to a spaceship. So it's that effect, but in the trailer. Now, I don't suspect for a second that it's going to do this in the film, but you go from Marie Antoinette being guillotined, and then it cuts to Napoleon picking the crown up. Presumably he's taking it out of the hands of the Pope. And he says, "I found the crown of France in the gutter, and I've placed it on top of my own head," which is similar-ish to a line in Waterloo, where he says that he found the crown of France in the gutter, and he picked it up with his sword. I think they're both cool lines. I prefer the Rod Steiger one, but it's a cool line, and it's a great scene where he'll be in the cathedral crowning himself. Obviously, if you've seen the painting by David, there are some callbacks to that. I wonder if when he crowns Josephine Empress, then they'll have the exact shot that David painted. I suspect they probably will, because they had the recreation of quite a famous painting of Napoleon in front of the Sphinx. So that's not in this trailer, that was in the first trailer. So I suspect that'll be in there. That'll be a nice Easter egg for fans of the period. So we get a this fall. It's a shame it's not a in a world, but you can't have everything, can you? Then it cuts to a cavalry charge. Now, they're all white horses, and they look like they are French cuirassiers, who traditionally would have rode dark-coloured horses. It was believed that the darker the horse, the stronger the animal was. I know absolutely nothing at all about horses. Literally nothing. But I'm told that's what they used to think. I don't know if it is actually true or not, but that's what they said. So the chance of at least a squadron of cuirassiers riding white horses is pretty unlikely, I have to say. But you know what? It looks cool. It then cuts to a battery of artillery firing. Now, I believe that these are Russian guns. If you look in just the central right of the screen, you can see a little cheeky Kiowa poking out above the smoke. And on the left, in the sort of mid-background, is a regiment of Russian, they're either cuirassiers or dragoons. They've got the very recognisable, very tall combed helmets on. So that's a Russian battery. It then cuts to Napoleon at the full gallop, leading the charge on a... now, he is on a white horse. Marengo, his favourite battlefield horse, was, of course, a white horse. I need no white horse to puff me, by God, as Wellington almost certainly didn't say. But did he lead a cavalry charge? Well, no, he didn't. But you know what? Okay. Now, I should say, I'm assuming that this is Borodino, because it's Russian artillery. It's not the same ground as they had at Austerlitz. In the scenes at Austerlitz, it was frosty. It wasn't quite snowy, but the ground was very white in places. This is a lot darker, so I suspect this will be Borodino. Napoleon absolutely had no fighting at Borodino. I mean, he didn't have any fighting anywhere. Maybe at Eylau he nearly got into it. But certainly after 1800 he didn't. Anyway, let's not get into it, but he certainly didn't lead any cavalry charges against the Russians, and he certainly didn't do it at Borodino. It cuts to Joaquin Phoenix as Napoleon at a dinner. He's sort of looking very unhappy as a dashing young hussar makes jokes and small talks with Josephine. So I suspect there's going to be some drama in the thing there. So again, a bit of a romance subplot going on. Again, Josephine almost certainly had a number of lovers. So, you know what, yep, that's fine. His uniform does strike me as being a Russian hussar's uniform, though, which would be, I mean, there was I think it was the first hussars had a pale blue, but, or it might have been the third, but this one, it looks a little bit more like a Russian one. It's got quite a lot of thick lace and braiding on there, which if it was, it will be another scene at Tilsit. Now, Josephine wasn't at Tilsit. In fact, Napoleon was with... I think it was Duchess or Countess von Lichtwer or something like that. I can't remember her exact name, but that was his Polish mistress, who the governors of Poland sort of tasked with winning him over to the cause of Polish independence, shall we say. There's a scene of him now getting out of his carriage. He's in his full early imperial get-up here, so that's quite nice. There is a number of tricolour on the in the scene though, so okay, that could be the national flag of France rather than a military flag at this point. Of course, the tricolour only came in as the military flag in 1812. So yeah, no, that's pretty cool. It could be Versailles. Don't think it is though. I suspect it's either Fontainebleau, or it might be standing in for Fontainebleau, or it could be the Tuileries, which is now a garden. It was a royal palace back then. But it's got a very long drive, which, I don't know, it could be Versailles. I'm not sure it is, though. I mean, yeah, not sure. Who knows these days with CGI, I suppose. Josephine lying on the couch there, making Napoleon say that he is nothing without her. Which, again, goes to their relationship. It was very much a very unbalanced relationship, really, with Napoleon needing a lot more validation from Josephine than the reverse. It's it's an interesting one. Is there a parallel with Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith? Yeah, okay. I'll leave that one to the listener to decide. There's then a shot of Josephine walking through, presumably Versailles, with her Pomeranian, looking a little bit pensive. I'm not sure what's going on there. And then we cut to the unmistakable onion domes of the Kremlin and Moscow, of Napoleon looking apprehensive, and then coming out and seeing that the city is on fire. It then cuts to him slamming a table with like a book or some orders or something like that. Again, I wonder if this is going to be him receiving orders that his armies have been destroyed. A little bit like the scene in Downfall where Mr. Hankety Plankety has finally been told that his Panzer armies have been destroyed. They don't basically exist anymore. And he has that moment where he loses his cool, shall we say. So it could be a similar situation to that. It could be when he's found out that, he's come to fully realise that he has to divorce Josephine in order to marry the Archduchess. It then goes through the quick words that it did at the beginning: warrior, general, tyrant, emperor, tyrant, rebel, all that kind of stuff. So that's cool. It links it back to the start of the trailer. And then cuts to a very quiet moment where he sat at a table with someone who I assume is the British ambassador to France, asking him what country they're in. The trailer then starts to get into its final, most exciting moments. As we see the Union flag, and we are quite clearly on the field of Waterloo. It cuts to another sort of emplaced artillery position, and we see some Brits in their Belgic shakos, which they would have worn in 1815, so that is good. And we then see the British forming square before cutting to the cuirassiers. Now, these cuirassiers are again mounted on white horses, so I presume they're the same ones from earlier on. You can see them flying the tricolour, which obviously dates this being after 1812, so 1815. It must be a scene from Waterloo. Now, one thing that it doesn't show is it doesn't have the battle honours on the flag. It's just the French tricolour. So that's a little bit of a shame. But, it's not necessarily the end of the world. We get an over-the-shoulder shot of a British infantryman firing his musket. And there's a thing that flies off into the air. It's actually a cuirassier's helmet. Now, I hope that that's been added by CGI and one of the actors didn't have an accident, because his helmet goes absolutely flying. So I hope that he's okay if it was someone real. We then see a very stern Napoleon raising his sword at the end, and the final word, he answers his own question to the British ambassador earlier on: whose country are we in? And he says, mine. So again, comes back to the old, it's obviously old, to the quotes from Napoleon where he said, I am France and France is me. He's not in France, he's in his country. So that's the trailer. It's an exciting trailer. I'm looking forward to it, I have to say. The uniforms really look like they're on point. It says that it's out on Thanksgiving, which I am told is the last Friday of November, maybe? I don't know. I'm not a colonial. I don't understand these things. If it is the last Friday of November, then... Or is it a Tuesday? It might be a Tuesday. I don't know. It's going to be towards the end of November anyway. So if it's last Friday, that's the 24th. I've got a feeling it's a Tuesday. Well, you guys will know. I don't know why I'm trying to work it out. You guys will know when Thanksgiving is. So I suspect that it might be Tuesday the 28th. But was it on a Thursday? I don't know. You know what? I've got no idea when Thanksgiving is. I could just Google it, couldn't I? But that's when the film is out. And I have to say, I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to have a good mix of war-y stuff and relationship-y stuff. So I think it's a good opportunity for you to con your better halves to going to go and see that by. So, it's not just warring. There's some romance stuff in it as well. It's going to be a really good way of getting new people into the period, new people into the hobby in general, particularly for the period. So what I'm going to do is, I'm hoping going forward to do a number of very simple getting started videos. And going back to Napoleonic's 101, I need to put a playlist of those videos together. And just making sure the people who are coming in from the film can access the channel easy enough. But it's also, I'm going to ask you guys, the wider Wargaming and Napoleonic community as well, let's use this opportunity to really push Napoleonics. Not push it down people's throats, but when people express an interest, let's make the most out of it. Let's say, you know what, I've got a couple of armies. Do you fancy a game? Oh, did you like the Austerlitz scene in Napoleon? Well, let's do a quick battle for the Pratzen Heights or something like that. Or just make up a scenario if you need to. But that is what I'm hoping from this film. That's why I'm so excited. Well, I'm excited for two reasons. Well, three reasons. The first one is I really like Joaquin Phoenix. I think he's a great actor. Joker was an absolutely superb film. He did very, very well in that. And ever since Gladiator, he's been good. The second thing is it looks like it's going to be pretty accurate. How often is it that we get £150 million films made about Napoleon? Not very. So rather than go, well, actually, the pond wasn't as deep as it is made out, let's enjoy the fact that we've got a £150 million film about Napoleon, okay? The depth of the pond, not really a major issue. I'm not going to lie. I don't think there's going to be many people who are, well, I would be interested in Wargaming Napoleonics, but the ponds was shown to be a bit too deep in the film than they were. I mean, who cares? And thirdly and finally, as a fan of films and big films, I'm hoping that this is a return to the epics that Gladiator could have brought about. Unfortunately, Ridley Scott's follow-up, Kingdom of Heaven, was pretty poor, although I do have the director's cut, which I'm told is much better. The reason I haven't watched it yet is because I don't have time to paint a First Crusade army. So that's the main reason. Well, it's not First Crusade, is it? It's a bit later than that. It's the Kingdom of Jerusalem. But still, I don't have time for that. If General Dan wants to put an army together, I'm more than happy to play it. I'd love to have a game with Seventh Son with his First Crusade stuff. But that's the reason why I've not watched that one yet. So there you go. That is the trailer. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. And I hope you guys can take some excitement and enjoyment out of this as well. Remember, these films, they don't come along very often. We've had slim pickings now for many, many years, since Waterloo, 50 years ago. So let's make the most of it. Let's get out there and enjoy it. I am definitely going to go see it on IMAX. I would recommend that other people do as well, obviously, if you can afford it. If not, then that's fine. But let's try and let's go and see it. Let's take our loved ones and our Wargaming friends to go and see it. Let's make this an excuse to celebrate Napoleonics in all of its glory. But I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you guys next time.